Chapter 2. Tools of the Trade. Outfitting yourself as a courthouse warrior. The 5-step process that makes up the core of this book is what has, more than anything, allowed us to consistently make money by buying foreclosures at auction. Just as important, it's also what's kept us from losing money. Here's a bird's eye view of the 5 steps. Step 1. The list. It's hard to buy properties at auction if you don't know they exist. Your first step is to either create or purchase a list of foreclosed properties for the area you're interested in. This list will form the backbone of your whole approach. In this step, you'll learn how to create your list and how to add to it, filter it, and analyze it to find the properties that work best for you. Step 2. The drive-by. A picture may be worth 1,000 words, but nothing is worth more than actually seeing the properties you plan to bid on. Once you've identified properties of interest, it's time to physically visit them. There are many tricks and techniques for gathering information on properties when you visit them. You'll learn them all. Step 3. Property analysis. Once you've narrowed down your list to a smaller set of properties that meet your broad criteria, it's time to analyze each one to decide whether the property meets your requirements for factors such as cash flow and ROI. The goal of this analysis is to determine an upper limit for what you feel you can bid at auction. Step 4. Title review. Once you've narrowed down your list to a few attractive deals you want to bid on, the last step before going to auction is to research the property title. Is the property the right one? Are the taxes paid? Are there other debts? Are there lien issues? This is the last stage of due diligence to make sure that the property you buy at auction can truly be transferred free and clear to you. Step 5. The auction. After all the careful preparation, the most exciting moment arrives: auction day. Nothing is more thrilling and potentially more nerve-wracking than competing on the courthouse steps with other investors. This is when all your hard work can pay off, but the auction is also a minefield for anyone new to the game. Step 5 is about mastering the very practical logistics of a typical auction day, from your arrival on site to bidding and payment, and everything in between. Plan the work and work the plan. That's how you mitigate the risks of buying at auction and earn the rewards. When we started, however, we didn't have a plan. We were just blindly stumbling forward, figuring it out as we went along. Fortunately, it worked. At least, it worked at first. After the skateboard-infused uncertainty of our first auction, we turned a nice profit on the property and immediately set our sights on doing it again. For the next few weeks, we did our homework and turned up at as many auctions as we could manage, intent on finding another great deal. We couldn't seem to repeat our success. Auction after auction, week after week, we didn't buy a single house. We'd show up at the courthouse prepared to bid, but our property would be delayed or saved from foreclosure by a last-minute arrangement, or we would be outbid by someone else. As the weeks passed, our first successful buy was beginning to look more and more like beginner's luck. That was when we learned one of the most important rules of buying at auction. Deacon versus Jasmine. 2 approaches to the courthouse steps. We didn't realize at the time just how lucky we were with our first property. We'd stumbled across a single home going to auction, then managed to buy it with little competition. In hindsight, that was extremely lucky and unrepeatable. In the years since, we've bought thousands of distressed properties, but we never relied on luck again. Instead, we've learned to look at the entire process differently. To understand our new approach, let's compare two would-be auction buyers, Deacon and Jasmine. Neither one has bought a foreclosure on the courthouse steps, but they're intrigued by the idea. They love real estate as a way to build wealth, and they see auctions as a more effective way to do it. They're aware that because of the lower prices, auctions offer a bigger safety moat and more potential profits. They also know that the 5-step process will help them be deliberate and make smart decisions. Although they're both excited, Deacon jumps in first. He searches out a handful of auction listings and spots a property in a neighborhood not far off. He drives by on his way to work the next morning to get a closer look. Deacon already has a good sense of the rental market, and he has a good feeling about the place. That night, he runs the numbers, estimating the costs of renovating and running the house, and calculating his maximum bid. A title search confirms that things look promising, and as the sale date approaches, Deacon makes financial arrangements. He lines up his cashier's checks, and a few days later, he heads to the auction. He arrives early, excited to start bidding. The excitement doesn't last long. Within a few minutes, he discovers that the place he was interested in won't be auctioned off. It was saved from foreclosure by a short sale. The trustee conducting the auction is offering other properties, and while Deacon recognizes several, he has no real idea what they might be worth and isn't prepared to bid. Instead, he watches from the sidelines as the places are snapped up at what seem like bargain prices. Deacon goes home discouraged. That was his first auction. It was also his last. Jasmine takes a different approach. She buys a list of more than 100 foreclosure properties in her area. She's done her homework, and she knows that not all of those properties will even make it to auction. And of those that do, only a few will fit her budget and other criteria. To find prospects, she narrows down the list to places that meet her requirements. Eventually, she narrows down the list to 10 properties that are a fit for her. Jasmine is busy, so she hires a contractor friend to drive by the places she's selected to take pictures and get a closer look. Later, with some help from a real estate agent, she analyzes the properties to assess their value and determine her maximum bid. She then arranges a title review to make sure she fully understands who owns each property and any liens against it. Based on the first 4 steps of the process, she now has 5 potential properties that fit her requirements. It's time to go to auction. When she arrives at the courthouse, Jasmine runs up against the same barrier as Deacon. Her lead pick isn't even going to be sold. In a last-minute stay of execution, the owner has found financing and sorted things out with a lender. Fortunately, Jasmine still has 4 more properties she's ready to bid on. Yet another property on her list doesn't make it to auction, but that's okay. Jasmine is outbid on the next 2. The prices rise above the threshold she's already decided on. But the last one is a winner. An hour later, she's standing in front of the house she just bought, giddy with excitement. Jasmine is now a real estate investor. Fishing versus hunting. Jasmine's and Deacon's approaches were similar in many respects. They both followed the same steps. They looked for properties that fit their requirements and budget. They did their due diligence. They carefully prepared for auction. The difference between them is that Jasmine pursued multiple options, while Deacon focused on only one. We call what Deacon was doing hunting. Jasmine, on the other hand, was fishing. Fishing is a numbers game. You're stalking not one specific target, but many. If you spend all your time trying to catch one very specific fish, you're going to spend a lot of time being disappointed. Deacon, unfortunately, was hunting. He focused on just one property. He had, in other words, just one line in the water, hoping to find just one specific fish. That was a recipe for going home empty-handed. Jasmine, on the other hand, understood that buying at auction is first and foremost a numbers game. Not numbers as in the financials of the property, but numbers as in options. You need to consider as many properties as possible to swing the odds in your favor. Jasmine knows you can't rely on catching one specific fish. You need to be strategic. You need a process. You need to get as many lines in the water as possible. The only way for Deacon to be successful was to get lucky. Jasmine knew that if she considered enough properties, she wouldn't need luck. Because she treated the auction as a numbers game, it was only a matter of time before Jasmine found success. Had Deacon selected more properties to analyze, he might have found more that were a fit. Instead, he went fishing once, tried to catch a single specific fish, failed, and decided fishing isn't for me. Deacon was out of the auction game before he'd even started. Lesson: success on the courthouse steps is a numbers game. You need to find and analyze as many properties as possible. Improving your numbers. Anything that increases the number of properties you can analyze is worth considering. To play the numbers game, Jasmine did two specific things differently from Deacon. They may seem like small things, almost inconsequential, but they multiplied her odds of success enormously. The first is that Jasmine used a simple tool, a foreclosure list, to increase the number of properties she had to choose from. While Deacon had just a few potential properties to consider, Jasmine had 100. Second, Jasmine recruited other people to help. She knew she didn't have time to drive by all the properties on her first shortlist, but to ignore them would be to ignore the rule of numbers. So she hired someone to do the driving. That let her consider 5 times as many properties. Great tools and great people. They're the two most effective ways to play the numbers game of buying on the courthouse steps. The first, tools, is covered in this chapter. The second, your team, is covered in the next. Note: tools and techniques change, and we're always expanding our approach. We highly recommend you sign up for free access to our online resource center at biggerpockets.com/foreclosure bonus. You'll find sample spreadsheets, updated links to the best tools, checklists, and more. The tools of the courthouse warrior. The county clerk recorder. There are 2 broad ways of finding foreclosure listings. The first approach is to create a list yourself by actually looking for foreclosure notices and building your own collection of properties. You'll find those notices at the county clerk recorder's office. Every home that is scheduled for foreclosure must have a notice filed on it. That's a legal document that's recorded by the county in which the house is located. Many counties have digitized the process and have websites where you can find properties listed for foreclosure. We'll look at this in more detail in part 2, but for now, you can find the county clerk for your area simply by searching online. Tax office. A search of the county clerk records can help you find properties that have notices of foreclosure associated with them. But that doesn't mean you'll know the actual address. You may have a legal property description, but not a street or house number. For that, you'll need the county tax records, which are also usually kept by the county clerk. For many counties, they're readily available online. For others, you'll have to go into the county clerk's office in person. List purchase companies. If you don't want to do the legwork of digging up foreclosure listings at the county clerk's office, there are services that will do it for you. This was how Jasmine found her list. These services generally charge a fee, but the time savings can be significant. It's a key way to expand your numbers. When assessing list purchase companies, note that there is often a trade-off between wide coverage and deep coverage. While a large national service might have some information everywhere, a state-level company may offer much more depth and accuracy for a particular area. This is a fast-changing area in the foreclosure space. For the most up-to-date resources and information on how to find complete lists online, visit our resource site at biggerpockets.com/foreclosure-bonus. Trustee websites. When a bank begins the foreclosure process, it hands the job of auctioning the property to a trustee. They're the third party who handles the foreclosure, and you'll see them on the actual courthouse steps, handling the auction itself. Many trustees list their properties online, and finding your local foreclosure trustee is a great way to source leads. One of the largest national players in this space is Auction.com. Not only can you find a large number of listings on their site, but they also provide an enormous amount of data on those properties, all for free. They're worth looking into. Just remember, the easier it is for you to get the information, the easier it is for everyone else too. Don't ignore them, but don't limit your fishing to just the obvious schools. Gmail. Whether you buy access to a list or build your own, you're going to need a place to track all the information you gather. When you first start looking at foreclosures, you're going to be convinced that you can remember the details, the things you see on a drive-by or the information you pick up online. You can't. After 3 houses, you're going to start mixing things up. You need a simple, free, and repeatable way to track your listing information, photos, neighborhood data, and property values. Fortunately, Google has you covered. With a Gmail address, you get not only free email, but also a powerful filing cabinet with unlimited space. In the list building chapter, we'll show you a simple, effortless way to have Google automatically file and store your property information, including photos, so that you can find it anytime in the future with just a few keystrokes. If you don't have a Gmail address yet, get one at gmail.com. Google Sheets. The best way to track and filter your prospective properties is by using a spreadsheet. You may be familiar with spreadsheet software like Microsoft Excel, but we found early on that Google's version, Sheets, gave us several advantages. It's free, and it's hosted in the cloud, which means automatic backups and access from anywhere. It's also shareable, so if you have partners, contractors, or employees, everyone can see and edit the information on your list. If you have a Gmail address, it means you have a Google account and can access Google Sheets. With Sheets, you can create, track, and search your entire database of listing information easily and for free. Property data. Real estate professionals used to be the gatekeepers to almost all property data. That's changed dramatically over the past 2 decades. There are now many websites that will give you much of what you'd find in a typical MLS listing. Things like square footage, lot size, heating and cooling sources, and the like. What they also offer that the MLS listings may not is more context and analysis. Things like school locations and quality, price and sales history, and value estimates. Here are some of the bigger players. Realtor.com, Zillow.com, Redfin.com, Trulia.com, Homes.com. In theory, local MLS data is being fed to Realtor.com first, putting it a little farther upstream from the others. You may find it to be the most current and complete resource, so it may often be the first stop on your journey. Each site offers a slightly different interface and options. Over time, you'll develop an approach for analyzing properties that suits you best. The main real estate giants, like Zillow, will also provide community and neighborhood information. Again, each varies slightly. Most people find a favorite go-to source where they start their search, and they use others to fill the holes. For a complete list of our favorites, visit biggerpockets.com/foreclosure bonus. Price and valuation. We covered this in detail in the next chapter, but briefly, at some point, you may find that a licensed realtor is a good source of information, particularly when it comes to estimating value. A realtor will have access to more data than you can typically find online. More than anything, however, an experienced realtor will often just know. They may have sold the same home before or seen several like it. They can also access historical sales data. You can, however, pay for the same level of data access your local realtor has. We offer a subscription service called padhawk.com that offers just that. Google Maps. You may be accustomed to using Google Maps for driving directions, but it has a number of other uses for our purposes. The most obvious is to locate a property, but maps may also tell you what neighborhood the home's in, and in most cases, you'll be able to use Street View to see the actual house itself. Interestingly, maps will also reveal property boundaries that might not be obvious in other documents. I recently analyzed a property and discovered through maps that there was an existing severance. I was actually looking at a house and 2 lots, not just one. That immediately changed the amount we were willing to bid. Batch Geo. While Google Maps does an exceptional job of letting you see a property and its surroundings, it's difficult to look at more than one property at a time. Enter Batch Geo. You can copy and paste an entire list of property addresses, and Batch Geo will plot them all on a map at the same time. When you're ready to drive by properties to inspect them more closely, Batch Geo can save you hours of driving by letting you see every property's location at once, so you can plan your trips more efficiently. The tools above will form the backbone of your property research. Many, if not most, are free. If you have a Gmail address and a smartphone with a data plan, you've got almost everything you need to kick off your journey to the courthouse. In later chapters, we'll go into deeper detail on how to use these simple tools to create a powerful database of potential foreclosure properties and collect enough information on them to make informed choices about whether and how much to bid. Taking the numbers game to the next level. Remember Jasmine, our successful first-time auction buyer? Using the proper tools to be thorough in her property search gave her an edge on auction day. But what really made the difference was the critical decision Jasmine made early on to include other people in her mission. While Deacon tried to do everything himself, Jasmine began to build a team. That, as you'll see, can make all the difference.